what's up? It's your host, Torry, and who is ready to be petty? I'm so happy to be back. It's been like about 2 weeks. I swear I haven't forgotten about you all. I've actually been podcasting a lot. I recorded the Framing Britney deep dive, and then obviously today's episode, I was a guest on Wombat Water, which is a really fun podcast. I can't wait for you all to hear it. I'm not sure when it's going to come out, but hopefully soon. I owe you all a solo epi. Literally, one of the funniest things has happened to me. It's one of those situations where I texted someone and it was sent to the wrong person. So I can't wait to chat about all of that. But I've been a little bit busy, which is weird because in this phase, whatever, of quarantine, I feel like I have nothing going on, but I am simultaneously so busy. I don't think I've said this on the pod before. I don't know why I just stuttered, but I don't think I've said this on the podcast before, but in January, I started a teaching English as a foreign language course. So it's about 10 hours a week, which is no joke. I kind of just thought it would be like a little bit of a side hustle, but it has thoroughly taken over a big chunk of my life. And it's so cute, y'all. I'm like making these little lessons for students and like doing some micro teaching. It's been really, really fun. Not to like get super into it. This is already a long episode and I feel like this is becoming a long intro, but I've always low key thought I wanted to be a teacher. So this is kind of, I don't know, indulging in a lifelong dream of mine that maybe I didn't realize till later in life. But there's lots more RTBP ahead. We've got some fun guests. This is your warning now to binge all 5 seasons of Summer House by this weekend. I'm giving you the heads up now so you're all ready for our next episode. Okay, this has been way too much about me. Today's episode is an important one. I'm talking to Aida and Zachary, 2 TikTokers with a love of Princess Di and the royal family. And of course, we're discussing the Meghan and Harry interview, what's happened since then, and I don't know, what surprised us the most. Y'all know I love new internet friends, and I really hope you enjoy the episode. I will give you a heads up that we do talk about Meghan's suicidal ideation that she shared in the interview. So we just briefly mention it, nothing too in depth, but I wanted to give you that warning now just so you can take care of yourself if you decide to listen to this episode. Okay, let's get into it. Here's my episode with Aida and Zachary. I'm back with 2 very special guests. We're going to get into the Harry and Meghan interview and everything that has happened since then. I'm joined by Aida and Zachary from TikTok. Aida, how are you?
I'm good, Torry. Thanks for having me back today.
Thank you. You, I feel like, are quickly becoming RTBP's royal expert. So thanks for coming back. Aida was on in early January to talk about Princess Di, and when this big interview with Oprah came out, I knew I had to have her back on the podcast. So thanks for being here.
Of course. I had to bring our real royal expert today. I had to call him Zachary.
Yes. So Zachary of TikTok fame, also a royal expert. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Torry. Well, thank you for having me. It's like my first podcast, so I'm like, ooh.
The inaugural episode.
Can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
So I am a musical theater performer by trade and degree. But right now, obviously, that's not in the works because of the pandemic. But I am currently just working here in my hometown, just waiting for everything to open back up and TikToking.
So where are you from? You're from Arkansas.
I'm from Arkansas, yeah, just a little small town in Arkansas. Well, I say small town because that's like a southern thing. I've realized like we could be in like a pretty big sized town and still be like, I'm from a small town.
Yeah.
Like that Southern hospitality.
Americans always say like, oh, I'm from a small town. And then I'm like, but have you been to Canada? Like every single city is a small town. Like even our biggest ones just don't compare to the States. And can you tell us a little bit about like how you first got into the royals?
I was literally just thinking about this the other day because someone asked me the same question and I was in second grade and I remember distinctly going to the library and I found like this big picture book of like the 80s or something like that, or the 90s. And it had this whole like spread about Princess Diana. And I remember like the first image I saw was like the wedding dress. And like that stuck with me. And then like since then, because I remember I didn't even know she had passed away until third grade. So I was devastated when I found out. I was like, wait, what? And that was like early 2000s. So it had been a minute. So I was like devastated. And then now I've just, I'm obsessed. I'm like hooked. It's like my reality TV.
I don't even remember who I was listening to, but they're like, in the UK, there's the royals, and in the US, etc., there's like celebrities, and that's kind of how we treat them.
Yeah, no, that's definitely like, I mean, I feel like the Kardashians and like Paris Hilton, Nicole, all of them, they definitely owe Diana like something because I think that's where like the world's first initial like fascination with like wanting to know what like these people, like these celebrity figures are doing like in real life, because she was everywhere on like every magazine cover.
Yeah, everyone had a fascination with her personal life, which was different than royals in the past, especially. And then they didn't often give interviews either. And then she gave that really big tell-all interview, which a lot of people are comparing to this one. And yeah, you're right. She kind of wrote the playbook in kind of celebrity.
I feel like it's like the circle of like politicians, the circle of like celebrities, and then the royal family like overlaps both of those. So they get like the CNN, the BBC angle, and like the Page Six angle. Like everyone has something to say.
You're right. Since maybe it's less superficial because they're like a monarchy than other people, that not only can people that are interested in like pop culture and celebrity get into them, but like, yeah, literally anybody, because they are like, yeah, an institution, which we heard a lot of in the interview.
Well, and Diana, she was the one I felt like that she kind of like pulled the veil back behind this persona and this mystery of like being a royal family member and we only ever do this and we never shake hands and this, that, and the other. And she just was like, no, we're not doing that.
I know. She was like so different from them. I also thought, and I kind of want to do a little bit more research into her, but Fergie also really, I think, like told the world about like what was going on and how different it was from like us normies.
Yeah, she is definitely like one of the most underrated, and I definitely want to research her more too, because I watched some of the clips of her Oprah interview. It was so eerily similar to Diana's and Meghan and Harry's, and I was like, oh, so okay, this is all adding up.
I know. I hadn't honestly looked into it too much until recently too. I didn't know that there was so much to say. I thought maybe that was my ignorance, but like you said, there's a lot of similarities between those three. It kind of gives you chills.
Especially because this is like 20, 30 years later, and it just seems like not history's repeating itself, but like these similar themes that are still coming up. And yeah, it's just all been fascinating to watch, obviously. So I think we'll kind of get into it. So we're going to give our overall impressions of the interview and talk a little bit about what we enjoyed about it and what surprised us. And then we are going to talk about what has happened since, because a lot has happened in the almost a week since the interview aired. And then we're going to talk a little bit about questions we still have of Harry and Meghan, of the royal family, and maybe hypothesize some things, put our expert knowledge to good use. So let's get into it. Ida, what was your impression of the interview?
Oh, what a good like Sunday night special Oprah had for all of us. The best way I can say it is like I was so, and it's going to be an oxymoron, is I was so surprised, but also not surprised at all. And I'll explain what I mean by that is that like I was like, everyone had a suspicion about most things that came up in that interview, I would say. Even like the tension between Harry, Meghan, and the family, like the race issues, even I think people had kind of made comments about. So that didn't surprise me much, like the fact that those issues exist. Them sitting down with Oprah and just putting it on the table, I think I was like, oh wow, like we're not beating around the bush. Like we're being blunt, we're saying it how it is. And I think that's what kind of surprised me, like the aspect that they didn't hold back. And I kind of admire that, to be honest. I think it's really hard to be vulnerable like that with everyone watching, and everyone's gonna have something to say. But I think it was just such a weird, like I didn't even know how to feel after everything they just said for those 2 hours.
Yeah, I feel like with these types of interviews, you get so hyped, and then you're like, okay, they might just be like super surface level, which like fair enough. It's their private lives. It's like some of their most painful things that have happened in their life. So like
Exactly.
they like have the right to keep that totally private. So yeah, I was really surprised at how much we really heard about what has been going on over the last couple years. What about you, Zachary? What did you think?
I just sat there with my jaw like unhinged the whole time because I mean, I knew, well, let me say this. There's truth to every story. So I knew at some point all these tabloid stories were the truth would get out eventually. But I like just hearing it all laid out there. And then Oprah, like with her like expert like way of just like getting the answer and getting it in such like a poignant and like historical way, just was like the icing on top of the cake. Like I saw some kids on TikTok who were like, I say kids because they were like, who's Oprah? Like, why doesn't she have a show or like something? And I'm like, oh, y'all don't know. Like, oh, this is not her first ball game. Like, Miss Oprah's been in the game. Like, she knows how to ask the
As
question.
a person who watched Oprah every day after school growing up, like that just astounds me that people don't know that.
Yeah.
I guess that's fair if they're like really young, but yeah, this is not her first rodeo at all. Yeah, she's not fazed by royals and getting down to like the answers we all want to hear. I agree that I was, really surprised at some of the content. I just feel bad that we're like at a state where they have to like always fight for their like relationship and like justify things that have happened. But I'm really glad that they both got airtime, and I'm excited to see kind of what happens next, obviously. And I hope that this was just a good experience for them and maybe some like healing and I don't know, maybe a weight lifted off of their shoulders.
Exactly, because I think at the end of it, they're talking about like their family. Like he's talking about his parent. It's hard, to us. It's like we talk about Charles. Like I feel like on TikTok, like everyone like likes to kind of put blame on him, but that's his dad. It's really difficult to talk about your family so publicly, I think.
Yeah, I know. I always like really underestimate that it's like that is their grandparents, their parents, their siblings. Just couldn't even fathom like the amount of hurt and complexity that these relationships have.
Sure.
Yeah.
Zachary, what was your biggest surprise of the interview? You said your mouth was it was dropped the whole time, but was there a specific moment that you're like, holy shit, like this is historic or this is wild?
I think the Meghan talking about her, like where she was mentally. And I just remember, I remember seeing like the headlines and things, and I'm like, she's pregnant. Like, give her a break. Like the one especially that I still can't wrap my head around is when they would like condone her for like cradling her baby bump. And I'm like, why is that a talking point?
Yeah.
Or why is that news? Like what? And so that, I think for me, because I remember seeing like those pictures from that event and all of, because I think that was right before the Lion King premiere, when she met Beyonce. Because I remember when she met Beyonce, I was like, oh, my worlds are colliding. And I think it's even more poignant now to know that's when their decision was made, was that night, that event, because the Lion King premiere was after that. And in that leaked video, you can hear Harry talking to the CEO of Disney, like literally being like, Meghan does voiceovers. Like they were needing money, they were needing a way out. So they already knew within, I think, that time frame, they were like, we gotta go.
Okay, you're like blowing my mind right now. You're totally right. And everyone shit on them for approaching the Disney CEO. They're like, this is so like uncouth, or like they're like, this is so tacky or whatever that you would do this. They were like desperate to forge a new path. That is such a good point. I hope that more people look at that clip in a different light. Yeah. But you're right, that event at like Prince Albert Hall or wherever, it's just so interesting because I looked at those pictures when they came out and I was like, she looks stunning. They look so happy. Look at them holding hands. Like, it's so fancy and like it's the princess prince fairy tale. And then just
I had no idea,
knowing that now, like I feel so bad, like just because you just assume like, oh, they, not that I ever thought like, oh, they had it easy, because I know that when they were even dating there was issues with the family and the public and the press and stuff, but like they just looked so glamorous and they were like obviously really struggling.
Well, and I think that point of the interview too was also such a callback to the Panorama interview. And so that for me, I was like, oh, because like it was already kind of like, oh, like another royal family member is doing a tell-all, but like that made it where, okay, so this is like our generation's 1995 Panorama interview. And it's just wild.
Okay, but this might be getting too much into it, and Ida, I want you to weigh in after about your biggest moment, but like, okay, so the Diana interview, wasn't that really well received? Because when I was watching this interview, I was like, this is the turning moment. Finally, Harry and Meghan will get some peace from all the fucking naysayers. And then it's still so mixed bag about like what happened and stuff, and it's so frustrating. Like, what do you think about that?
I think a lot of it, honestly, it comes down to race and how intertwined racism is into literally everything. Because had Diana been the mixed race woman who gave that interview back then, she would have been burnt at the stake, you know? And I think that's why Meghan is so polarizing, because the only people I ever see on my social media that drag her or that have anything negative to say about her, none of them are people of color. Not a one of them. Not a one of them. And I always check, because I'm like, okay, this person has a lot of feelings. And I always go to their like TikTok accounts, and they're always like white men, white women. White women especially resent her. I have noticed.
I see that too. Like internalized misogyny, racism, just all at play.
I'm gonna agree with Zachary, because someone like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Princess Diana had this like everyone loves her aura around her. Like no one had anything bad to say about her, which, you know, we all stand her, we love her, but I don't think it's as black as white as that. And like even when Meghan and Harry were getting married, like people were like, she was an actress, she's been divorced. Like we're in 2000 and when was it? 18? Like since when is being divorced like so taboo? And I feel like people pick at random things and decide they hate her, and then anything, like what I've noticed is when you hate someone, they could tell you the sky is blue and you will find a way to shit on it, pardon my French, but that's how I think a lot of people approach her. Like she could say, hi, my name is Meghan, and people will be like, oh, she's so self-centered. Like, why did she say that? And I think that's just how it is.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I think like when you also can't pinpoint like where your hatred comes from, like it's usually something like race. Like that's really when you should be checking in with yourself and like unpacking a little bit of that for sure. Ida, what was your biggest surprise?
I think we talked pretty in depth about it so far. One part that really surprised me was when Harry made that comment and was like, it was so savage. He was like, if my dad, after he stopped picking up my calls, just like Zachary, my jaw went through the floor. I was like, that's shade.
Yes.
I gasped. I audibly gasped. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
I think it was like so intentional too. Like it was just like
100%.
here we go.
100%.
Yeah, that really, really surprised me because I didn't think that it was at a point where they weren't on speaking terms. And like it wasn't just like, oh, we haven't talked in a while. It was like he stopped returning my calls, and we're going to talk about this later, but Prince Will was at a event this week, in the latter half of this week, and everyone asked about the interview, and he said, I haven't talked to Harry yet. And I was like, that seems weird. Either you're buying yourself more time and you have talked to him, or you haven't talked to him, and like that seems so weird that you wouldn't immediately pick up the phone after this had aired. Any thoughts about that?
I am sure there is much more to that story, even more, because my whole thing is with Harry's body language throughout the whole interview. Well, number one, I noted he had like very little airtime, and I think that was intentional because I think he, like, with him putting in that little comment, like I think he would have completely just burned the whole palace down if he had been on as long as Meghan had been
100%.
on. And I think it was intentional that he wasn't on there as long. Yeah. And William, there's definitely more to that story.
100%.
And I can't wait to chat about that. My biggest thing, definitely that Meghan was struggling and that they refused to provide her support. A few things, like the royal family, or at least like Will, Kate, and Harry, have been on so many like mental health initiatives and really trying to like transform like healthcare practices and just break down some of that stigma related to mental health struggles. And to hear that that hasn't translated to the royal family or like the firm or whoever manages it is like really hard to hear, because obviously when you're doing this type of work you need to have it like impact many people, but like it should also start with your, I want to say, in like employers. If we were like normal people, like if you have weird office culture about this type of stuff, but you're like spouting it externally, like your intentions need to align with your like your company or the institution, what they're in. And then the other thing is they're like, this is so embarrassing if you seek help, which we know that's the absolute opposite. It takes so much courage and strength to come forward with these types of things. But it was weird how they're like, that's embarrassing. Wouldn't they want her to feel better and get the support that she needs so she can carry on her duties, and so they can keep it private, like, so not to hide it, but to I don't know, just support her as what a family or like a group of friends or colleagues would do. It was so weird to me. Do either of you have an idea? Do you think it was like an immediate royal family member that denied her this support? Or do you think that it was like they kind of mentioned like human resources or like the people that manage them?
Well, how I understood it was like first Meghan approached, like whether it be like a person or I'm going to assume she went to like the Queen's aide or like her aides or like, you know, because they've all got like their offices. Like Charles has his office, you know. So I'm thinking like that's where she went to first, and they were like, absolutely not. Because I would probably put money on it that the Queen had no idea. I really don't think that she had any clue. And then from like the interview, I feel like it was like she did that, and then she literally went to like their HR.
Yeah.
Because she, like, as an actor, like she mentioned, like we have the union, and she's like, well, this is the same thing, right? And then for them to be like, sorry, like you're not on the payroll.
You're not on the payroll. Yeah.
And I think something that like she made clear, and I kind of maybe knew this, but I don't think I knew to this extent, like how much, I guess, in air quote power is really out of the hands of the royal family. Like, not that they are powerless, but I think like when you think of like whose fault it would be, the people that make these decisions are like people with no name or face to us, like people that view the media. And I hate to say it, but I think that those people probably don't care about Meghan to the same extent. Like, your relationship with your employer is way different than your relationship with your family. So when your employer doesn't back you up, and then you go to their boss, which is a family member, and they don't back you up, I think that's when you kind of get in that like corner dead end position.
Do either of you want to explain a little bit more about, like, because you're referring to like Clarence House and like Kensington Palace and stuff? Those are the offices that they run?
Yeah, I mean, so there's Clarence House, Kensington, Windsor. But yeah, they all have like offices that manage their affairs, like a PR team. I'm sure there's a marketing team, social media team now.
Exactly.
That people are, you know, they brief them, they make their schedules for them. And that's like in that the clip where they talked about how the Queen couldn't see them after they had made the announcement. Like all of a sudden she like couldn't see them. She didn't make that decision. And that's the crazy thing, because the Queen's not sitting around like with a planner like, oh, today I guess I'll meet so and so, you know, like these people are doing it for her, and she just wakes up and does what she does.
That's so true. And we see that on The Crown, like the people making the schedule and stuff. Mm-hmm. Why don't we hear more about them or who they are, or like, I guess they try to keep that private? Because like, again, yeah, like I would want to hear from those people.
They're probably very well paid and very comfortable, and they probably have healthcare. I'm sure they probably have housing there. Like, these people, I mean, that's their lives. Like, they're basically living the lives of the royal family, but they're
not the like outward people.
It's like they're in the shadow. Like, they're the the wizard behind.
Yeah.
I mean, they're literally the professor hiding in the curtains behind the Wizard of Oz floating head, like making things happen. And it's also kind of like scary too to think there's like this alternative like people running around pulling strings and doing that. But they are. I mean, they're the ones squashing the stories. They're the ones that Diana duped, because Diana didn't tell them she was going to do the Panorama interview. So that's why hell broke loose when that happened. And the book with Andrew Morton.
And that's a really interesting point too, because it came up in the interview about that huge headline right before Meghan's wedding about her supposedly making Kate cry. And she was like, no, Kate made me cry. And yeah, I guess it would have been up to those people to squash that story, and they chose not to, obviously deliberately.
Well, the timing of that to me is what is suspicious, because that headline didn't even come out till months after they were already married. Like, what was it? Like, she said like 7 months after or something like that.
Yeah, there was one, I know what Torry's talking about. There was one headline that did come the Sunday before. Do you remember? Yeah. It wasn't the Kate situation. It was another one.
Oh, the dad stuff.
The dad, yes.
Like days before.
Yeah.
Like,
and Meghan, so that's what she was insinuating, right? Is that the people that run the office could squash these stories and talk to the press, and they every single time decided not to, and then her just be like absolutely annihilated by the public.
Well, she made a comment which was interesting to me, and she was basically saying how like they invite the press to the palace or to events, like the same way that you bring them in, you can shut them out, number one. And I would assume that they shut out rumors about, if today I go and I say, oh, I'm gonna say something about Prince William, they're gonna stop me. Like, I think they've done it before. So I think watching them like protect other people, and I think she kind of alluded to this, and like not protecting her was kind of what hurts more, because you're like, you know, Kate's a sister-in-law, I'm a sister-in-law, or just why is it so different? And I guess it goes back to some stuff we talked about before in the podcast, but
I think they have to also have a scapegoat. And Meghan was their sacrificial lamb in that aspect, because then the Prince Andrew mess came out. That story got squashed about Prince William cheating. on Kate.
Yeah, no one talks about that.
I remember reading that thread that the journalist posted, and she was like, I was literally told, like, if I post this,
Yeah,
like,
they
my
ruin
career is
you.
over.
They have the money, the power, and the name to ruin your life. Like, that is like a statement of fact.
Yeah. Okay. This is so wild. You're right. So, like, they're protecting people like Prince Andrew, and they're just letting Meghan just get all of the brunt of it. It's so ugly. Yeah. And the Will cheating thing. You're right. No one talks about that anymore.
And it's almost like a distraction. Like, let's talk about Kate and Meghan having a little bridesmaid fight so everyone forgets that Prince Andrew was on Epstein's Island like 2 years ago. Like, that's literally like it's bait for the public.
I know, and we're all like, like most people are. I guess this is an audio only podcast, so I can't do that. But I like most people are like, okay, the bait and switch, and we've already changed the topic.
Exactly.
Prince Andrew stuff hasn't been in the media for a long time, but all of this, every fucking step Meghan takes is detailed like extensively.
She's brutalized. Even in my local news, like that I'll see on like Facebook, like they just post the general articles, but people in the comments are like, oh my gosh. And they just see the headlines and think like, here's a princess like crying about how awful her life is. So I get it in that aspect, but also I don't think they understand like the bigger picture of like why like the people who stand Meghan, like we're like, but wait, like she's really the victim. Like she is genuinely the victim here. Like
a lot of people were like, oh, look at these like wealthy, privileged people discussing these things, but you can still have empathy and for people that experience these things, because money doesn't protect you from racism or misogyny. So
I think what is even more mind-blowing to me too, because everyone keeps saying like, well, imagine if Meghan had been a dark-skinned woman. And I'm like, we already know, like, she would have never made it down the aisle. There would have never been a ring on her finger. Me and Meghan are both biracial, both like 50-50, half white, half black. And we're both like where we could pass. Like if we didn't get out in the sun and we straighten our hair, like we could pass as white people if we had to in society. And it's just the fact that she has black in her that pisses off the people who don't like her. And the general just institutional or what is the word I'm looking for? Systemic racism that is just intertwined within not just America, obviously, but like the world, like the Western world, like the everything. It's so crazy to like break it down. And like, if you really think about it, like everything goes back to it.
I saw this quote or this Instagram post the other day. And it was saying that it was basically not verbatim, but paraphrasing it, it was basically saying like colorism is what got Meghan's foot through the door and racism was what kept her out. So it's like literally, I think it summarizes what Zachary was saying about the whole situation.
Yeah, and I am glad that you both brought that up, because a friend of the pod, Priyanka, sent that to me before we recorded. Can you repeat the quote, Aida? Because I just want to make sure that everyone can ruminate on that for a second.
Sure. So the quote was saying, basically, colorism is what got Meghan's foot through the door and getting in with the royal family, and racism is what has led to what we are experiencing today with her exclusion and the way that she's being treated.
We could have a whole podcast
just
discussing that singular quote, but it is really true. And do one of you, I don't want to put this on you, I could also explain it, but do you want to break that down a little bit more for the listeners that maybe haven't heard the term colorism before?
Yeah, so like I'm light skinned. In the Deep South and like the civil rights era, there was like the paper bag joke or experiment or whatever, like the paper bag saying like if you're lighter than a paper bag, like a brown paper lunch sack, like you can pass as white. And then if you're any darker than that, like you're screwed basically. And like with colorism and like how that works, like you can see it like Netflix, for example. We always want like more like black representation, but we get a lot of like lighter skinned, mixed race black girls and boys in that position. And we don't see dark black representation. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. Like people that have lighter skin might benefit from being closer to whiteness than people with dark skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about it in the royal family, and it's so gross. And I think a lot of people were so surprised, but it's tough to feel surprised about this because it's like this is a family and an institution that has colonized most of the world, and we're still living in a world, like post-colonized, or no, it's not even post-colonization, like it's still happening nowadays. So it's like again, this is a much larger conversation, but people were so surprised at some of these things, and it's like, but you're talking to like the source, the like root of all of this, really, and the way that it can continue to infiltrate our society.
100%.
Okay, let's chat. That's a lot of stuff to chat about. And again, like, if you want to learn more about this, like, there are tons of things on the internet that you can look up and do like your own research, but this is just our thoughts about it. Okay, so the interview happened on Sunday. I guess it aired on Monday in the UK. Oprah goes on I think it was GMA, whatever Gail's talk show. I want to just call it Gail's show. And she talks a little bit about how the interview went, how Harry wanted to make it clear that some of the things that they talked about, like the family discussing their baby's skin color, wasn't the Queen and Prince Philip. She talks about how they're not super, super close. I guess maybe just trying to show some objectivity. And she said she was texting Meghan during the episode airing, which I thought was really cute. What do you two think about Oprah kind of clarifying those things for Harry about the Queen and Prince Philip?
I think for me, it was very poignant that Meghan, because Meghan right off the bat was like, the Queen has been nothing but welcoming and warm to me. And I think for me, that helped me solidify because I really feel like the Queen genuinely like has no idea what's going on. And I feel like even in The Crown, obviously that's fiction, but she still has like no idea because she's being the Queen. And these people aren't going to be like, oh, well, Meghan's doing this. Like they'll probably like briefly tell her like, hey, like this happened, but she doesn't get the full story. Because I thought it was very sweet that Meghan told the story about their first event together. And that was pre-wedding, right? They weren't, I don't think they had walked. And it was just so sweet that the Queen was like, come on, Meghan, like get warm, like share my blanket with me. Like, so I think that it was very poignant that she made the point that it wasn't the Queen and Prince Philip. Like they're embalming that man. Like he is just going like in and out of the morgue every day. So like, I don't even know that he can like speak in general. Like, I mean, didn't he flip his whole car? Like a year ago or something, he got in a wreck, remember? And they were like, you can't drive anymore. Like, you're done. You're cut off.
They're immortal.
Yeah. They have something that we don't have access to, clearly. He's like coming up on his 99th birthday. You're right. He probably doesn't have the fucking mental capacity to like know some of this shit.
He probably has no idea. He's probably clueless.
Oh my God. That's so funny. Ida, what did you think?
I think Oprah definitely tried to make it clear that there was no like internalized bias. Like at the beginning, she was like, this isn't paid. We live down the street from each other, but like we don't talk, and the whole what you said about the interview. So I think that was something she tried to make clear at the end of the day. Any guesses as to, so it's not the Queen and it's not Prince Philip. That's two names off our list. Any guesses? Because I know what Zachary thinks about who it could have been.
It makes sense to me that it would be Prince Charles.
I feel like after like thinking about it longer, because initially I did think Philip, but Prince Charles was like I think is multiple people, but Prince Charles. But I think I would not be shocked if Princess Anne
really
made the comment. I really wouldn't be shocked.
Is she the one that wore the brooch?
No, that's Michael of Kent.
Oh, yes.
Is it Princess Michael of Kent?
Yes, I think that's it.
Well, I also found out she definitely had to have said something, because she not only did she wore, for those who don't know, she wore a brooch that had a very offensive depiction of a Black person, but bejeweled. And she wore it to a dinner that was like specifically for family members to meet Meghan.
Mm-hmm.
And she also has two Black sheep whose names are Venus and Serena.
Wait, I did not know that.
Meghan is friends with both of those women, but specifically she's best friends with
Yeah.
Serena.
Oh my God.
This I feel like it gets uglier and uglier.
And there was one other point, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was another thing that she was like very outwardly just fully racist.
Oh my goodness. And why did you speculate that it was also Princess Anne?
And I don't even know necessarily that she would have said it. I think about how they said, well, it'd be very damaging to them. So that's why I think like it has to be William and Charles that had the conversation, because Anne doesn't have
say
much
yeah,
stake.
yeah.
But Charles and William are both next.
Well, Charles is probably not next. He's old.
Well, and like we don't really even know the full detail of the conversation because he wouldn't give it. So like we don't even know like if it was just like a passing comment, like a side remark, or if it was genuinely like a whole meeting where we were like, hey.
The one thing he said though was that it was multiple. I think that's the part that pushes it, because even if you're making multiple side comments, it's like, why are you thinking about this so much? Like, go pick up a hobby. Like, you should have, it's offensive. Like, why are you thinking about my child so much?
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I really see it from Prince Charles, but Prince Will, like, I don't know. I guess he's just had such a good reputation that I assumed the best in him, but
again, that's the palace, the powers that be making that facade, because he's next in so we don't even know the skeletons in his closet.
I know, because they especially have to make the reputations of the people in line for the throne, I feel like squeaky clean. Ugh.
And that's probably why Kate didn't bear the brunt of a lot of bad press coverage, because they had someone else that they could pin it on.
It's so complex. Do you think that Harry and Meghan like reconcile with the family after this? Like, this was pretty damning. Ida, do you think like Harry and Meghan are going to like the 95th and 100th birthday of the Queen and Prince Philip?
I was going to mention that because in the last time we talked, you ended off with that question. You were like, what is happening? And this was like in January. So we just thought Meghan and Harry were like living their best life in LA. I just don't know how you can recover from that interview. As like putting royalty away, like I'm putting it in my perspective. I think if I went on Oprah and said private things about my father as a nobody in Toronto, Canada, I don't know how I would like, those bridges are burned in my opinion, or at least pretty bad. I think the one thing that upsets me is that we grew up in an era that I feel like we always saw like Harry and William post, and like they were kind of the duo brothers, especially after going through something so tragic with like the passing of their mom. Even when Kate and William were together and Harry was single, they were like, he was the third wheel. So I think that aspect makes it sad. But you obviously all saw when the reporter was like, oh, have you spoken to your brother? And he's like, I have not yet, but I will do. Like, he sounded like he was going to call him to the principal's office.
I know.
Yeah.
It sounded so formal and stuff for the way that like brothers would interact. It was super, super weird.
And the sly placement of them having the Black woman in braids.
Okay, so let's chat about that for a second. So Will and Kate are at a function. This is like Thursday, so just a handful of days after the interview. Like we mentioned before, Will is directly asked, what did you think about the interview and have you like talked to Harry? He says, my family is very much not racist. And then he repeats that. And then he says, I haven't talked to him, but I will like in due time or whatever he said. Kind of ominous. Yeah. And then you're right. So they had also a Black woman there in braids and like a colorful outfit. Do you think that this was like a quick PR cover up setup type thing?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, even if it was a coincidence, they were probably all like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Like, even without all that, like, they were probably like, this is exactly like okay, great. Like, we're good. The world's going to see this and be like, oh, they're not racist. Like, whatever, Meghan's lying. And we're all just like, that is like the most like desperate ploy you can make.
100%.
It's just, well, and Charles did it too.
This seemed less genuine because you're right. It could have been planned beforehand. Who knew? Like, I'm thinking the worst, but could give them the slight benefit of the doubt. But Prince Charles posted like a 10-slide Instagram post of him visiting, I think it was called Jesus House, and it was just all Black people and him like posing with them.
Yeah.
And that just seemed even more staged.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the politicians kissing babies type thing. Like, exactly what it is. I mean, that is like the British equivalent of like when all the Democrats wore the African, what are they called? The scarves, and they were kneeling. And I'm like, y'all literally have the power to make legislation to stop white supremacy. And like Nancy Pelosi is like wearing African American, like, I was like, what? So like that's like that is like the British version of that to me. Like, to just be like, oh, perfect. Like, let's get a photo op and like post it all over our socials.
Exactly.
I don't even follow Clarence House anymore.
Yeah, I don't. It's so curated and it's performative.
Mm-hmm. Very performative. Yeah.
100%.
I just want to know, and maybe Ida, you can start like what do you see happening next? Do you see an interview after this? Do you see, just like rumors that they've reconciled or that they still have a riff? Will they welcome their new child, the new girl that they're having? Where do you see this going?
Oh, hard question. I don't know. I kind of think, and this is something we haven't talked about, I kind of think this interview, aside from like the whole family situation, was like a way for Meghan and Harry to like clear everything up and like, I don't want to say move on, but I feel like they have good things coming for them. They have a child coming, like you said. They started Archwell, which is huge, and they only have like one episode on their Spotify. Like, I think I would, aside from the family drama, I would just love to see them like do their thing, like flourish, keep working for the organizations they care about, and kind of like give like two like big middle fingers to the family and be like, we can do whatever we want without your name and your help. As for the family side of things, I think the birthdays will say a lot. I think that will be, because I think if they attend, I think that's like a unspoken reconcile. I think if they don't they don't attend and there's pictures everywhere and they're not there, I think that says everything else for that.
I bet Meghan won't go because she'll be pregnant. She'll be pregnant.
And how are you gonna show up? Yeah, like 100%.
Yeah.
But because I don't know that pregnant women can get the vaccine. Is it safe for them to? I don't remember if that.
Yeah.
I know there's like discussion, but I'm like, she's probably not gonna, because she'll be pregnant by then, because she said by the
summertime.
And I'm like, I would not be one to travel 9 months pregnant to England
and like dressing up and all and attending like a major event too.
Yeah, I think pregnant women can get the vaccine, but she wouldn't be able to fly like come, I think, like 8 or 9 months, I think. So
right.
I guess it depends on when it lands, but I wouldn't see her going. I'm sure they're gonna stay. And just a side comment before we get your take, Zachary. This child is going to be born in the States. Does that matter with any of the like heir to the throne type of shit?
That's crazy, because the thing is, you've got citizenship. Like, you can run for public office if you want. So
right.
It's weird. I'm very interested to see. But I mean, I'm sure the powers that be would never let it happen, because they didn't even want to give Archie a title.
Right.
Yes.
So I bet this baby probably won't have genuinely any claim to the throne unless like everyone else in front of her like was gone. And then by then people would probably like, then why do we have the monarchy?
Why do we gotta abolish the monarchy?
Yeah. Like, so, but it's an interesting theory. Like, I think it would make for like really good television.
I want this kid to run for president.
Yeah, they could have like a career in like American politics if that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And yeah, I guess they probably just get English citizenship through their parents, but yeah, that's wild. So much to look forward to. So Zachary, where do you see Harry and Meghan, like, yeah, professionally and then like personally with the royal fam?
I mean, I'm sure Disney's gonna jump on having. Well, they already did have Meghan, I think, narrate a
Yeah.
Scandal film, so I'm sure they're gonna jump on that more times. I'm interested to see like what content they're gonna keep posting from Archwell, not just from podcasts, but from what I understand, it's trademarked so that it can be like an umbrella of like maybe even like a network or something. So I'm interested to see what all they do with that, because I think they've left it open enough that the possibilities could be endless. I mean, they're going to need money soon, because I'm sure Diana's money isn't going to get them through that much, which I think we didn't talk about this earlier, but can we please discuss the fact that Diana, which obviously she knew William would be taken care of, so she left everything to Harry, but just the coincidence that like she had all that left aside for Harry, for him to, if he could leave, he could and just go. And I think she knew.
She knew.
I think she knew Harry would be the one to go if any of them did.
Yeah, and Ida and I talked about this on the last podcast that we did, like just really how much we've seen this for the Harry's entire life. Like we all knew that this wasn't his like destiny. So, and he talked about that in the interview, like that he feels bad for Charles and Will because they're trapped and that they have to continue to do this and stuff, and that he got released like per se, or he got out of it. And it kind of seems like it's a little bit of like survivor's guilt, like he got out of it and gets to kind of pursue what he wants to do, even though he was like, yeah, I'm still like doing like charitable work that I would have been doing if I was with the family. But yeah, it seemed like he had a little bit of guilt that way.
But I think all that guilt was probably gone after he realized like, oh, like we're not giving you security. And they had to go to Tyler Perry.
Yes, literally.
Like, yeah. I saw the funniest tweet that was like, I just can't get over the fact that Tyler Perry was the one like protecting Meghan and Harry. They're like, all I envision is like them playing in like the Medea wigs in his closet.
Yes. And like last year, before COVID really kicked off, they were living like 20 minutes away from where I lived in Canada. So I, like, my family and I,
were y'all like going on drive?
There's that picture of Meghan and Harry walking on Horth Hill Park, and my family, trust me, we went to Horth Hill Park.
You're like, and time to go.
And then we went to the cafe that they went to, and then we went to the little market that they went to and like picked up snacks. So we just did like our little royal family tour.
That's so cute.
So yeah, they were like hiding out here before they went to the States. So yeah, I wish them all the best. Truly, the rest of the people I like care so much less about. Now I'm just like all team Harry and Meghan, and I do hope they reconcile if that's what they need to move forward in a good way, or if they keep their distance, if that's what they need. I'm happy for them to do that. But yeah, I'm waiting like on the edge of my seat for the Queen's birthday and Prince Philip's birthday to see if they show up, because I think that will be so fascinating.
Or Prince Philip's funeral, to be honest. I mean,
I feel so bad. I feel so bad.
This man just had like what, open heart surgery or something? Like, he is not well.
Zachary, your face was so sincere, and then Ida and I are just like dying.
This is,
I'm like, well,
a complete side tangent. Like, I literally think the Queen, Prince Philip, I agree with Zachary. He's living life on the edge. I think Queen Elizabeth is immortal. Like, I think she will outlive me.
Well, the women on that side of the family, they don't live.
Yeah, they live.
Even because the Queen Mother, she was like a low-key alcoholic. And she was what, like 103?
Yes.
But she was a low-key alcoholic. Like they
Yeah.
kept that on the DL. But she was like partying up until the end.
So Zachary and I were having like a side conversation like on Instagram before, and we were just chatting, and they go, "Oh, what if the name of the daughter is Diana?" And I was like, that is the one thing that could kill Queen Elizabeth. Like not COVID-19. Like if that baby comes out and it is like Diana, funeral time.
Oh my God. I saw that meme that was like, Prince Philip doesn't want to pass over because he'll meet Diana.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Well, I remember back in like right when he announced like Harry and Meghan's engagement was announced, and everyone was like so shook because we're like, oh, we got a black girl, we got a sister up in there, okay. And I remember people were like, I know Queen Elizabeth and all of them are mad because like Diana is still shaking the tables from like the grave.
Yeah, that's
because
so
I mean,
true.
honestly, none of this would have happened had she gotten out, had she gotten divorced when she wanted to and all that.
Yeah.
It's also key to remember Diana has said herself, like her marriage with Charles was over after Harry.
Exactly.
Like after she had Harry, or like during the pregnancy, which like to me, that's probably why like they were so close, is because, you know, I think Harry and Diana were definitely the closest.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think I've gotten that vibe like their whole life.
Well, because William was probably always kept having to learn and prep to be king literally at a drop of a hat.
Right.
That's why it's so meaningful to see Harry do some of these things, because I really think it's like his mom's like wishes and stuff. And yeah, I just love that.
Because I don't think the image of Harry walking through the same minefield would have had as an emotional effect on me if it was William.
I know, it's so weird. And I think just like even their complexion, like their rosy cheeks and hair and stuff like that, it just
exactly.
Will nowadays looks like he's from the Windsor side.
Oh, it's so sad.
It's so sad.
But let me tell y'all, Harry on James Corden, when he did that whole army,
oh my God,
I was like, oh, Harry, like he was just when he climbed that rope.
Yes. Okay. I'm so glad that we can like finish this on such a positive note, because Aida and I, in our last episode, we ended it on William's bald head. And I'm so glad we can just chat about the Harry interview. That was shocking to me.
That whole interview was just such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And I almost wish it would have come out after this interview, because it was so funny to just see Harry like cussing and like asking that random couple, like, can I please like take a leave? Like, sorry. It was just so funny. And like even Meghan, like she looked beautiful. She looked like at ease. Like,
yeah.
And now I'm not a big James Corden fan of him personally. That I was like, okay, like we'll allow it.
I just couldn't believe he could do that army crawl and not get any mud on his shirt.
I know.
It just him when he climbed that rope. That was when I was like, oh, okay, he still got it.
That was so impressive. Yeah, as soon as he rolled up in that little like athletic outfit next to James, I was like, oh damn. Like, yeah. That's so funny. First, I should say, is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I'm just very anxious to see what happened, like this time next year, what has unfolded between then, because I think that's going to make or break a lot of things, better or for worse.
Yes, yeah, I'm really, this seems like such a turning point that I'm, like on pins and needles waiting for like the next moment.
Hopefully, whatever it is next year, though, we won't be in a Panda Express, like whatever is happening.
Yes.
Because I would love to go to a meet and greet. Like if they had meet and greets in LA, trust, I would have a ticket. I'd be going. Like,
oh, for sure, me too. I could not even imagine. That's again, I was climbing a fucking mountain trying to find them. Yeah. Like, thank you both of you for coming on the pod. This was Some parts of it was not fun because it was a serious conversation, but it was really, really nice having you both on.
Well, thank y'all for having me and thinking of me to hop on too.
Yeah, thanks for the hot tip, Ida.
Of course. The second you suggested this, I was like, I have to ask Zachary, but it was so nice to chat with both of you.
Like when she DM'd me, it was funny because I was like, wait, like tonight we're doing it.
Yeah, I'm ready.
I was ready. I was like,
Can we just appreciate like internet friends and how this call I had to send 3 different time zones. I was like, is anyone free at like PST, CST, and EST?
I know, and I'm so glad you did the math for me because that is like, I can never get it right. So I'm so glad. But yes, thank God for internet friends. Where can the listeners find you, Zachary, on TikTok? And tell the listeners what they can expect when they see your TikTok.
Yeah, I just have like this weird mix hybrid of like musical theater and then like now royal family content because that's like, it was weird because like I wasn't trying to blow up, but I was like, I was really putting like a lot of effort into the musical theater side and then the royal family side that I just like posted like a literal, like I was like, oh, I'm about to go to bed, but let me post this. And then from there, it blew my whole account up. So it's just so funny how when you aren't trying that it that it works like that. But yeah, my TikTok is Zachary_A_Myers because someone took my other one. But my Instagram is also on there. I have like a link tree with all my other socials on my TikTok. So
nice.
All of that will be there to find.
Nice. Thank you. And Ida, where can the listeners find you?
You can find me on TikTok, Aida Salamat, and on Instagram as well. Same at. No link tree. I'm not that official yet. But yeah, I feel like I'm the same Zachary. Like it's like you do Royals content and then you're like, okay, I have nothing to say. And then one thing hits and you're like, okay, like time to do every trend. But I feel like TikTok now is just like a random mixture of whatever you want to create. Like you just pop it on your platform and like one will take off.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for coming on.
Well, thank you.
And there you have it. Thank you so much to Zachary and Ida for joining me on this podcast and bringing their royal expertise and their lived experience to the pod. I super, super appreciate it. And of course, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's podcast, there are a few things you can do. You can follow along on my journey at RTBP Podcast. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And TBH, soon to be TikTok. I will admit that I made the account. You can find me there. But I am nervous to start. It is really unlike me to be like camera shy, but I found in this pandemic, I'm just not wanting to like film myself. And it's not anything to do with the way I look per se. Maybe it is. I'm just obviously getting ready a lot less. So I'm comfortable, but yeah, maybe just not filming myself. But that's something that I am working through. So stay tuned. I feel like now that I've said it out loud, I have to follow through. But I just love the content that Ida and Zachary make and would love to follow in their footsteps. You can also leave RTBP a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. It helps the pod find new listeners. I hope that you are staying sane out there. I know it's been a long 2021 already, but I hope that you are happy and healthy. And thanks again so much for just being on this journey with me. As always, I'm your host, Torry, and I'm ready to be petty. See you soon. Bye.